Hi there and welcome to my channel. My name is Megan and today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. And in March, the total number of books that I read was 12. Two of them were audiobooks and one of them was a graphic novel, but I still did really well. I don't usually read that many books in 1 month, but this month I wasn't working as much, so I had more reading time for me. I'm going to talk about my audiobooks that I finished for the month of March 1st, and the first one that I finished was Brisingr by Christopher Paolini. This one is the third book in the inheritance cycle, and it was a lot of fun to go back into this world and listen to this book again. The audiobook is pretty good. It's not my favorite thing, but this book we follow on our adventure with Aragon and his dragon Saphira on their quest to pretty much destroy the evil emperor and the empire and take it down. And this one I think I gave 5 stars, but I'd give it like a 4.5 stars on Goodreads if you can do half stars, but you can't, because it was a little slower at points. The book is really long, and there was a little bits that weren't quite necessary, but it didn't take away my enjoyment from the book at all. I still really enjoyed it, and that's the only real issue I have with this book. I love so many of the things that happens. I love all the characters that we get to see again. We have some very fierce and fantastic female characters. We have Arya, who is an elf, and Nazueda, who is a black woman who is actually in charge of the rebellion called the Varden, and she is fantastic. I love her. Oh, I love her so much, and the things she has to do in this book is just incredible. And of course, following Aragon is great, and his dragon Saphira. I love the relationship between the two, and it just grows more in this book, and I just have really enjoyed being able to reread this book. I can't say too much without spoilers. If you've seen any of my other channel, you've heard me talk about this series before. I'm going to say on this book because I can't say too much without giving away spoilers, but overall it was a great experience to listen to this book again, and I really enjoyed it. On to the next book, which is Finding Audrey by Sophie Gonzalez, and this one we follow, if you can guess, Audrey, and she has social anxiety disorder, and there was an incident at school that happened where she was bullied, and we never find out exactly what happened, which was a tad bit frustrating, but overall the book was more about social anxiety and how it affects different people and ways to try and overcome it. Audrey has trouble leaving her house and dealing with other people outside of her family and her therapist and group therapy that she goes to sometimes, and those are the only people that she's actually comfortable with. And overall the audiobook for this was fantastic. And Audrey was just a really interesting character to follow. I liked her, and I liked her family. Her 2 parents and her mother and father were really entertaining, and she has 2 brothers. She has a little brother who is 5, I think, and she has a brother who is, I think he's around her age. I can't remember if he's older or younger. His name is Frank, and then we have his friend Linus who comes in, and so we have that dynamic, and the sarcasm we get from Frank is fantastic. He's so funny, and we deal with the relationship between her brothers and her parents, and the difficulties that she has with navigating with real life. And Audrey is also not able to go to school because of her issues, so she stays home all the time, and she does schoolwork at home, but she is just pretty much focused on getting better. But the beginning of this book had me hooked right off the bat. It was so good from the get-go, and once I started it, I found that I just could not stop, and I listened to this in like 2 days. It only ended up being about a 6-hour audiobook. So many things that happened in this book were so funny. I found myself laughing out loud all the time. The audiobook experience was so fantastic. If you want to read this book, I would totally suggest listening to the audiobook because it is so good. We have 2 different narrators, a female and a male, and they're British because this takes place in Britain, which was really nice because I love listening to British accents. I don't know, I find them kind of relaxing, and they just did such a great job that I was dying laughing. Honestly, this book had me in tears laughing. So 5 stars to this book because it was just so good, and I would highly suggest it if you like contemporaries and you're looking for an audiobook to listen to, because this one was great. I cannot give it praises enough. On to the next book that I have that I don't have with me, and that is Mechanica. I took this one out from the library. I saw on someone else's channel and I thought, hey, I'll check it out. And I thought that this was a contemporary novel. I just thought it was one book story, and apparently it isn't, which makes sense because there were a lot of things set up in this book that didn't come to fruition, and I was expecting more for it. So overall, I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads because the writing was alright, and the characters were interesting to follow, but just not a lot happened in this book. The plot was really kind of it follows this sort of stereotypical Cinderella storyline, except that it does have a twist on it, which I appreciated, which is why I gave it 3 stars instead of 2, because the plot twist at the end was kind of, okay, I see where you're going with this, that's nice. But this is set in a fantasy world where you have fairies and magic, and Cinderella is a mechanic. If you can't guess, her name's Nick, so it's Mechanica. That's the pun there. But there was just so much set up in the story that I wanted more from it, and we have the fairies, but we never actually get to see the fairies in this book, and I was really disappointed in that. It was a short 300 pages novel, not even, but just not a lot happened, and I was just hoping for more. And overall, I'm not going to be reading the sequel because this one didn't impress me that much. I wanted a lot more from this book. I was hoping for more, and it just didn't live up to its potential. That's all I have to say about that book. Go on to the other book that I read that I bought from the library that I don't have, and that is The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. This book was a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars because I really enjoyed the characters and the fun journey we went on. I was in the mood for contemporaries, so I read a lot of contemporaries. In this book we follow Molly, and she has a twin sister, and her twin sister gets a girlfriend in this novel, and she feels like she's sort of losing her sister, but she also really wants a boyfriend. She is kind of a bit too desperately needing a boyfriend. That's kind of an issue I had. She talks about how I need a boyfriend, and I really need a boyfriend, and I've never had one, and I'm 17, why have I never had a boyfriend? Oh no. And I'm like, it's not that important, and a lot of people at the age of 17 haven't had boyfriends or girlfriends. It's okay. You're alright if you've never had a significant other. But there was definitely a lot of diversity in this book. But overall, the reading was really fun. We have a few cute romances, and we have a lot of just adorableness in this book. I really can't say too much else about it. It's not the most memorable book, but I will suggest to read Simon vs. the Homo Sapien before this book because there's a cameo, and I haven't read Simon vs. the Homo Sapien. It didn't really impact me because I haven't read the book yet. So I would suggest to read that one first and then this one. I think it would make the experience a little bit better. Yeah, that's really all I have to say about that book. The next book that I read this month is Love, Hate, and Other Filters by Samara Ahmed. This book was a fun novel. I gave it 3 stars because there were a few issues I had with it, but overall I enjoyed the experience of reading this book. If you haven't heard of it, it's been around BookTube a lot, so you probably know. We follow Maya, who is 17 years old, and she wants to be a filmmaker. As you can see, she's got a camera on the cover, and that's kind of her dream job, and she likes to film a lot of things and put them into movies. But she is an American Indian Muslim, and she has to deal with her parents' kind of stricter guidelines of what they want her life to be, and they set her up with a nice Muslim Indian young man, and they go out on a date, and then she's also got a high school crush that she has on a white boy. This book kind of felt like it was almost 2 different books. Like the first half is a very fluffy contemporary novel, and the second half deals more with Islamophobia and bullying and racism after a terrorist attack has happened, and some people automatically assume that she had something to do with it. And we just deal with that, and that part of the book I loved. I think that more people need to actually read about this, and we should have more stories and books that deal with this kind of issue because it is very prevalent, especially in American society. I found it very refreshing to read something like this. One of the other issues that I had with it is that Maya is Muslim, and we really never actually see her do anything Muslim. She never goes to prayer with her family. We never see her reading from the Quran, and she only ever like really discusses her religion once with her family. There's like a small segment, but I really wanted more to do with her religion, because this book was marketed as with a Muslim main character, and I really wanted to see more of that. We did get like a little bit of the Indian culture, and that I really appreciated, but I just wanted to see her talk about God once, and maybe just have her mention that, okay, I went to prayer with my parents and we were reading from the Quran, or something. Just wanted a little bit more, and that would have helped me enjoy this novel more than I did, although it does definitely deal with some very serious issues that should be talked about more, and open up my eyes a little bit, and I really am glad I read this novel for those reasons. So yeah, overall 3 stars. It was enjoyable, but yeah, I did have a few issues with it, so I wasn't able to give it a higher rating because of that. On to the next book that I read was The Truth Commission by Susan Juby. This one was really interesting. I really did enjoy reading this. We follow Norm and her friends Dusk and Neil, and we follow them at their art school. They go to an art school in BC, which is the province where I'm from. They actually go on a Vancouver Island, and that's one of the reasons I picked this book up, because I love settings that take place in my province and 2 places I've actually been before, so that was really cool to read about. But this one is pretty much like, it says Truth Commission because Dusk starts this little thing where they are trying to figure out that they're trying to find out different people's truths, and it was really interesting to like the discussions about like truth, like just bringing truth out into the open, help people, and it was definitely a really interesting book to read. It was kind of quirky and fun and weird at times. Our main character Norm has a older sister who has written a very famous graphic novel series that features her family but in a more fantastical setting, and she kind of takes the mistakes that her family made and puts them out in the open in this graphic novel series, and it was kind of brutal to read that, and that's not a spoiler because that's mentioned pretty early on in the book. But her sister was kind of like a recluse, had a very strange personality, and she comes home from college and after an incident, and then she's pretty much a recluse stuck in her room and writing and not really doing anything after something happened, but she won't talk about what happened, and so Norm kind of wants to find out the truth of what happened to her sister, and so we follow them. And there also is a little bit of romance in this book, but it's not prevailing. It doesn't take the main focus from the book. It was just kind of cute and fun, and I enjoyed it. Definitely enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 5 stars because I really didn't have any issues with it. It was just really interesting to read, and I would definitely recommend it to any of you out there if you're interested in something like this. Pick it up because it was good. And then the other one that I want to talk about is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. This is another library book that I took out, and I have seen this all around BookTube, so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. A fantasy series that has 3 sisters who are fighting for a crown sounds really interesting. Boy, was I disappointed. I was pretty disappointed in this book. So we have our 3 sisters who, as I said, are trying to fight over the crown, and each of the sisters have a different power. One is a poisoner, one is a naturalist, so has power over animals, and the other one is an elemental, so has power over the elements. And one of them will be queen, and they pretty much have to fight it out. And that's what I thought. But for the first, 2/3 of this book, nothing really interesting happened. We had a lot of romance. Each of the 3 sisters has their own romance. The 3 sisters are kept separate from each other. You don't really see them together much in this book. Only until the last 40 pages of this book did it actually start to get kind of interesting. Really nothing much happened in this book. I gave it 2 stars because of the female empowerment that this book had. There was a lot of feminine power, and I really enjoyed that, and the powers were cool, but I just wanted more. I felt like we could have had a lot more setup with the fantasy world and with the magic system, and I felt like there could have been a lot more action and a lot more things happening. There was also a love triangle in this book, which was so annoying. I did not like the love triangle at all, and the character Joseph, I hate him so much. So there's a lot about this book that really annoyed me and that made me want to throw it against the wall, but I didn't, and there were some aspects that I enjoyed. And I have the second book, and I might read it because there was a twist at the end which kind of wanted me to read the next one, and I saw that a lot of people said the second book was a lot better than the first book, so I might read it. But I have so many other books that I'm more interested in, so that and I don't know when I'll actually get around to it. That is just my quick review of this book. Sorry if you liked it, I really did not. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven. This book we have a overweight teen named Libby, and she was once the fattest teen in America after some traumatic events happened in her life, and she had to be lifted out of her house using a crane. That event happened 3 years prior to the start of the book, and in the start of the book she's going back to high school after having lost a significant amount of weight. She's definitely still overweight, so we deal with her being bullied by the other kids because of that fact. Not that everybody bullies her, and she has to learn kind of how to stand up for herself, and I love her character. She's very strong and rather dependent, and I love how she deals with a lot of things that happen to her. I think she's a great character. I just love like so much that she does, and I just think that she's an amazing character. Love it when we have characters that are overweight in books, because sometimes you don't often get main characters who are overweight or significantly overweight, and I'm really glad that we got that. And the other main character that we follow is Jack, and Jack has face propagnosia and has face blindness, which pretty much means that he can't recognize faces, individual faces. So like he'll see a face and then he can see you 2 minutes later and he won't recognize you because he's pretty much forgotten like your face markers. So he has to try and like remember what clothes people are wearing, or like what their hair looked like, or how tall they are, or like what their skin color is. So it's like to try and remember who people are. So that definitely causes him a lot of issues in high school, and he's definitely a bit of a jerk at the beginning of the novel, and I love his character growth and how he has to come to terms with the fact that he has face blindness and he has to deal with that issue. And the romance in this book was pretty good. I liked it. I did enjoy it a lot. I think I gave this 4.5 stars. The ending kind of wrapped up a little bit too neatly for me. I don't think that real life works quite that way, but that's my only real issue with this book. Other than that, I really enjoyed being able to read this book. I would suggest it. I haven't read anything else by Jennifer Niven, but I want to give her other books a chance because I enjoyed this one. The next book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, and this one I read at the very beginning of March, and I read this with, I did a buddy read with Secondhand Shan. Link her channel down below. She does books and gaming, and you should definitely go check her out. This book was a lot of fun to read. It's a fictional historical World War II novel, and we follow the point of view of two main characters. We have Werner, who is in Nazi Germany, and he is a young man at the start of this. He's very intelligent, and he works with radios and wires and communications. And he also has a little sister, and he is a very intelligent young man, and he ends up going off to a private school to get better education. And then we also follow Marie, and she is a blind young girl, and she lives in Paris, and she has to escape the war with her father. And this novel does take place from the beginning of the war, so from 1939 to the end of the war in 1945. It's just really a beautifully written novel. It made me feel so many emotions, and I would definitely suggest this novel because it was just so beautifully written and very powerful, and the ending was absolutely gorgeous and had me tearing up, I'll admit. And all the characters in this are very human, even if they aren't your stereotypical good character. You get to see the human side to everybody in this book, and I really enjoyed it. The chapters in this are very, very short, and we are switching point of views often because the chapters are short. They're like maybe 3 or 4 pages if you're lucky. So that did take me a little bit to get used to the short chapters, but once I did and fell into the flow of the novel, I really started to enjoy it a lot more. Really happy to read this novel. It was absolutely gorgeous. I gave this 5 stars on Goodreads because it was just such a gorgeous read. Definitely suggest this read, and I had a fun time reading this with Jen. We were able to discuss the book as we were reading it. Reads are so much fun to do this, and I will definitely want to do more of them in the future. And then the next series that I read, there are 5 books in this series, and this is a reread. Here are 5 books that I read. I'm just going to show you one at a time. The first book is Inigo by Helen Dunmore, and then we have the second book, The Tide Knot. The third book is The Deep, and then the 4th book is The Crossing of Inigo, and the 5th book is A Storm Swept. It's different characters than the other first 4 books, but I'm just gonna give a brief description while holding up the first book of the series so that I don't take up a lot of time talking about this. Inigo is the first book in the series, and in this one we follow Sav and her brother Connor, whose father goes missing, and they live in Cornwall, and I loved the setting of this book. It was a very gorgeous setting. Saf and Connor are trying to figure out what happened to their father, and on their journeys they go down to the coast where they love to go, and Saf finds the Mer, and they are mermaids and they call themselves the Mer, and their adventures sort of starts there. And this book is just really easy to slip into. The writing just kind of like sucks you in, and it's very lyrical, and the writing just kind of flows together very easily, and it's just so easy to read this series. The books are each 300, a little bit over 300 pages, and these are aimed towards children, so if you're an adult watching this you might not be quite as interested in this series, but overall I really enjoyed rereading the series. I read it before when I was younger, and it just kind of has a little bit of a special place in my heart. I just enjoy getting swept back into this series. The other books in this series as well the writing is all very magical and beautiful, and it's just a gorgeous books to read and get into. I never found myself bored in any of them. I found myself connecting with the main character a lot in this series. I love books that have to do with the sea because I just find them so magical as long as they're written well. There really isn't any romance in this series, so I enjoyed that aspect of being able to read these books, and it wasn't too cliche, which is another thing that I really enjoyed about these books. But overall, the first 4 books are just really fun and entertaining to read. The last book that I've read with the series I just showed you was Storm Swept. And this one has completely different characters, and we follow Jenna and her twin sister, and they live on this tiny island that has a lot of history with the Mer, and it also takes place in Cornwall, which again I love. The setting was gorgeous, and the writing is also just very lyrical and whimsical, and we don't have any of the same characters as we do in the other series. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I did the other series. I did enjoy it though. I gave it 4 stars. I just kind of was hoping for a little bit more from it. I don't know exactly what I wanted more, but it was still a lot of fun to just get into. The writing was very lyrical, whimsical, and magical, and it was just really easy to just slip right into, and the story was fun, and the characters were interesting. But again, this one's short. It's barely 300 pages, so it's not a long book, and it didn't take me very long to finish it. So these books I read at home like 1 week. Just felt like rereading them, and I just couldn't seem to stop myself. Yeah, we're on to the last book, which is a comic book, and that is Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And if you don't know who Miles Morales is, he's pretty much the Black Spider-Man. He comes in after Peter Parker was already established as Spider-Man, and there's actually a little cameo from older Peter Parker in this book, which was pretty cool. But I heard about Miles Morales, and I really wanted to read more about him, so I've only read the first book. I have the second and third graphic novels coming from the library soon, I hope, so I'm excited to get to those because I really enjoyed reading this. I'd give it like 4 stars, I guess. I'm not like the biggest comic book reader, so I don't have a lot of expertise in reading comic books. They're just kind of fun, easy things to read, and I enjoy learning more about the characters. I never really read comic books as a kid, so it's just kind of interesting to read it now as an adult, and I actually do enjoy them, and I kind of wish I'd read more as a kid, but whatever. But I'm really excited to read the next ones in this series, and it was just really fun to get to learn more about Miles and his life and his friends and some of the women in his life. That is the last book that I read this month. That is all 12 of the books I have read this month. Sorry that this video was so long, and thank you if you stayed through and watched the whole thing. That's all I have for this video. So again, thank you for sticking to the end of this video, and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you want more bookish content from me, and that is all for now. Thank you for watching. Bye!